In tonight's Government Insider, overcoming dysfunction in Washington. Congress has less than 10 full session days to pass a bipartisan funding bill for 2016. But given the current partisan climate on Capitol Hill, a continuing resolution or even a shutdown are more likely. How can lawmakers move past politics to get things done? For answers, we turn to our guest tonight on Capitol Insider, Max Stier, President and CEO of the Partnership for Public Service. Okay, Max, Washington could be facing yet another federal shutdown at the end of the month. Congressional approval was already low after the last shutdown in 2013. What's causing all of this dysfunction?
Well, we just put out a report that's focused on an element that does not get enough attention, and that is how is the partisanship and the dysfunction on Capitol Hill actually impacting the rest of government, and ultimately how is Congress not serving as a good steward for the executive branch. And the whys and what fors, there have been an awful lot of discussion about it. I think there's been insufficient attention paid to the ways in which we're all suffering in all kinds of ways because government can't do what we want it to do if we don't have better stewardship from the Hill.
Now, that report you talk about, it's part of your organization studying the problem, and you spoke to former high-level political appointees to analyze what's going on. One of the things you found was that the divide between the legislative and executive branches can be narrowed by building relationships. Tell me more.
Absolutely. What we found was that there are good things going on, and they're going on in places where members of Congress are reaching out across the aisle on issues where there is common concerns, where they're reaching out to executive branch senior leaders and creating the kinds of relationships that allow good things to happen. People are always going to have differences of opinion. The question really is, what do they do from there? Do they stop all work, or do they find ways to develop a win-win situation? And it is happening in some places. Good example, involves one committee chairperson who, at the beginning of a Congress, just brings together both sides of the aisle for a session to develop those relationships and find places where constructive work can happen, and that pays dividends as things go on. Tom Davis, former chairman of the Government Reform Committee, talks about members getting a rhythm. They can get a rhythm if they build the relationships, and if they hunker down in their bunkers. That doesn't happen, and again, our point is we all suffer. Government can't do what we want it to do, and that's a problem.
There also seems to be a lot of mistrust between the two branches, especially when it comes to congressional oversight. Your report found that many federal executives feel lawmakers are more concerned with headlines than the actual issues facing agencies. How true is that, and how do you fix the trust issue?
Well, it is a big problem, although what's also fascinating is that the number of oversight hearings have actually declined precipitously in recent times. If you go back, for example, to the Reagan era versus the Obama era, there's a lot less in the way of government oversight. So it's the volume of oversight and it's the quality of oversight where members are in a position frequently, and again, this is not always the case, but where they're looking for the gotcha rather than looking for the solution. I can't resist just this last night, my son, who's 9 years old, learning about government, and came home and said, I need help on my homework. Why is it that we have three branches? And the answer you want to give is because of checks and balances. But in fact, what we're finding is it's not checks and balances, it's actually dysfunction. And that's not what it was intended to be, it's not what it needs to be, and we got to change that.
Not only dysfunction, but paralysis, Max. So how are government employees coping with all the partisan politics, because it can affect morale?
Well, it does affect morale in all kinds of ways, and obviously this is a timely issue with the ramp up of conversation about a potential government shutdown. And the truth is that the pain is being felt now, even before a shutdown has actually happened, even if it never does happen. We've got lots of federal employees that are doing their job by actually preparing for a shutdown they should never even have to think about. And this is the point of our report, which is Congress impacts the federal government in four special ways. One, obviously, is in budgeting. A second is in the oversight function, which you mentioned. Third is in legislation. And a fourth is in confirming leadership. And in all four of those areas, Congress isn't doing its job right. It's not behaving as a good steward. And we as taxpayers, we as the American public, wind up getting worse government. So you see all kinds of stories out there about government not doing its job right. We need a lot of people to step up, and Congress is a big piece of it.
Now, in this latest report, Max, on Washington dysfunction, the Partnership for Public Service made a few recommendations. One of them was to streamline the confirmation process. That's easier said than done. My second question, do we have to wait until a new presidential election to make things better?
No, well, if I can take those in reverse order, we don't have to wait. There are a lot of things that could happen in the here and now. We could begin with simply actually having a budget so agencies can plan to use their resources smartly. You know, no budget, you can't plan, and everyone ought to understand that. In terms of the actual confirmation process, there are confirmations that are supposed to be going on right now. In fact, at the end of administration, you see sort of the bathtub, a lot of people leaving and a long time before people get back into place. That's incredibly disruptive to these agencies. The administration and Congress need to be working together to be getting leadership in place quickly in the here and now. You look at a good example of this is the Office of Personnel Management. Obviously, the last leaders left. We haven't had a nomination for a new leader. We need one quickly, and we need a confirmation quickly. But there are all kinds of positions like that that are essential to the functioning of government, and we need, you know, both the executive branch and the legislative branch working cooperatively to get those filled. Now fixes are possible. Congress passed a piece of legislation that reduced the number of Senate-confirmed positions by almost 10%. We have way too many of them. Over 1,000 positions in the federal government have to be confirmed by the Senate. Frankly, the Senate doesn't need that confirmation process in order to have oversight over government. And what that means is that the nomination process is slowed down and the actual confirmation process gets in the way of leadership getting into place quickly. So that's one fix, is you can make the pipeline process work better, or you could put less through the pipe. And we ought to see both happen.
Amen. We all hear you. Keep up the good work. Max Stier, President and CEO of the Partnership for Public Service. Thanks again, Max.
Thank you.